I have a picture in my mind of sitting in some outdoor cafe in Assisi with Swamiji a number of years ago. I don't know when. And he was just saying, he was speaking of himself, he said, I was so young when I was with Master, young on the path, young in the human body. Master died before his 26th birthday. So his entire contact in the body with Master was from the age of 22 to not quite 26, which is not immature on the soul's level at all, because obviously to have such a birth was intentional, because he had a project, he had a job to do, and he needed his life to do it, so he needed to start early. But Swami said, I was so young, he said, and just so wistfully, he said, if only I could be with Master now, I would understand so much more about how to be with him. And I responded by saying, well, sir, isn't it true that one would always say that? You know, that there would always be, until one is realized, one is always going to be discovering new dimensions that you just didn't know were there because you didn't have the capacity to know. Swami's, the words that were read, Swami's speculating that Master may have been coming back for thousands of years. Swamiji had filled out that thought several times by pointing out various great avatars through history that one way or another were associated with this path. Babaji himself being Krishna, Master being Arjuna in that incarnation, Lahiri Mahashaya being Kabir, perhaps Master was Shankaracharya. Swami presented, Swami also became persuaded that Master himself had come as Jesus all those years ago. And so he said, perhaps they're in charge of this planet. It doesn't, seems like rather a small assignment, but nonetheless. But you have to factor into that we are Master's army, so to speak. Well, probably literally in many incarnations, because he was often a warrior. You know, the Battle of Kurukshetra, and then as William the Conqueror, I mean, that's how he's called, because he went and conquered. As Ferdinand III, he was king for 26 years, as I recall, and he was at war for 26 years. His entire incarnation was to preserve Spain for Christianity and not allow a competing faith to come in. And he had to do that by going to war. How many times have we died for him? How many times have we lived for him? How many times more will we be given the divine opportunity to do that? You know, young or old, male or female, whatever the situation might be, why are we born and what constitutes a meaningful life? And what does it mean to be a disciple? You know, Swami Kriyananda had the spiritual capacity to declare himself a guru in his own right. When I spoke to him in a taxi cab in New York City in the early 70s, I have a very visual memory. So oftentimes when I remember where it happened, I also remember what happened. And we had been visiting a well-known teacher at that time, a woman teacher who was quite advanced and very impressive. And why we were there, I don't recall. But she had a program in the basement of one of the big cathedrals in New York City. There were like 700 or 800 people there. This was at a time when we got 30 or 35 for Spiritual Renewal Week, considered we'd done really well. So there are 800 people. They were all chanting Om together. I had an out-of-body experience. It was quite incredible. The next morning I said to Swami, and there was a lot of accoutrements of being a guru around this particular woman. And the next day when we were in the taxi, I said, "Sir," jokingly, in India there's a custom where one disciple has the job of carrying the white umbrella, and they walk behind the guru the whole time to make sure that they're always protected from the hot Indian sun. So I said to Swami, "Sir, if you just let one of us walk around carrying a white umbrella, if you would just do a little more to make this happen, if you'd play the game a little more," I said, "we could really get this show on the road." And, he knew that I was half serious and half joking. He said, "Master said to me that I would be spiritually responsible for people." He said, "I would be more than a teacher." Not Swami said about himself. That Master said he would be spiritually responsible for people, which is an interesting way to phrase it. But then he said, "I always thought I could do more for people as a simple, unaffected friend than in any other role." The last decade of his life, he was different, but for the first 30, 40 years, that's how he did it. It was always interesting to me that he said, I could do more good for people by presenting myself this way. In another context, he said, "The world has lots of gurus now." He said, "What we need is examples of what it means to be a disciple." And that was the position that Swami held until the last years of his life, very, very strongly. That's why he said, "I wish I could be with Master now." And that wasn't an affectation on any level. That was just the sincere realization of what it means to be a disciple and to have a guru. At the end of Master's life, Swami writes in The Path that some man, an elderly man, gathered walnuts from the side of the road. Obviously, the man was on a small budget, and he sold the walnuts, and he used it to buy yarn, in which he did a needlepoint design, which was a picture of Sri Yukteswar, done with yarn. And there's a picture of it in The Path, of the man with his little cap on standing next to the picture. And everything about it is beautiful. I understand it's still on display at Mount Washington, but I don't recall. I've not been there often enough to know. But here was the part about it. Swami writes that whenever Master was hanging outside Master's room, whenever he went in and out, he would pranam, like that. When people asked Master a question once, why did he do things in a certain way? He said, "It is the will of Babaji." When people asked Master, is Dr. Lewis your first disciple? He said, "So they say." God is the guru. We have this idea in our mind that we just make up. We make up so many things, and then we say them to ourselves so often that we forget that we just made them up. But we make up all these ideas about what it means to be a guru. But what it means to be a guru is to be a disciple, which is to say, I killed Yogananda long ago. No one dwells in this temple now but God. There is no self to claim it. And it's all these different parts play in our consciousness at all times. And it's the power of grace, which Swami defined in one of his readings recently. Grace is the power to be uplifted. And that's not our power. We play around the edges, but when it comes, that which we call ourself plays no part in it. And it's the liberation from that self. Words are so difficult in this. I'm so impressed by how tenacious our self-definitions are. You have a few moments of freedom. You just, your mind and your spirit is just lifted up, and you're not you anymore. Then the next thing you know, you're thinking about what to have for supper. Why? Why does it take us so long? It's just time after time after time. We set these conditions. We just set these conditions. I need this to be happy. And we do. We can't just get rid of it by making it otherwise. Because I have this Instagram channel, I get emails from people I don't know. I've never met, let me phrase it differently. Not met in the body. And so it's just these vignettes of people's life experience. And someone wrote to me, and there was a picture there. It was a woman and her husband. The photograph was a woman and her husband and these two beautiful children. And it was a very loving family photo. And she wrote to me, she said, I used to be a spiritual person, and I was impressed by the idea of transcendence until I had babies. She said, now I can't imagine letting them go. I can't imagine, not defining myself entirely by those children. And of course, what can you say? We do it lifetime after lifetime, and it is the right thing for us to do. You see, it's not wrong, because we have to have the experience. We have to keep trying. We have to test every possibility, and we also have to serve. And one of the most powerful ways to learn how to love is to have children. Everybody who has had a child knows that, and it doesn't have to be in this lifetime to know that. But that's what we're trying to learn, how to love and then how to serve. And then as we learn to be disciples, our idea of what it means to serve gets bigger and bigger and bigger until, like Master, Swami says he's been coming back for thousands of years. As long as one stray brother is left behind. And then we have to think also what it means to be on the receiving end of that kind of love. And you see, that's how we gradually let go of these other realities. It ceases to be a karmic necessity because we're finding it from everywhere. But every human being has this deep desire. The book that Swami wrote, the last book he wrote, Love Perfected, Life Divine. He said, and this is in the foreword of the book, he said, everyone wants to be loved. He said, not just impersonally by God, but personally by one other person. And he said, and God would not plant that desire in our hearts if he didn't intend to fulfill it. Isn't that beautiful? But then after that, after we really begin to understand what love is, then we can begin to move into infinity. And what love really looks like is 1,000 times I will come again and again as long as one stray brother is left behind. And yet we live in this world and we are so afraid. We are so afraid. We are so lonely. We are so insecure. And it's not because Master isn't trying. to fulfill our hearts. It's not as if that grace isn't there. It's just that we take it for a few minutes and then we think about dinner. Or you can fill in the blank. And so it's a matter of just constantly coming back. You know, I've often had to speculate because it's now been so many years that I've been doing this, trying to do this. Even doctors practice medicine. So we practice meditation, you know. And it's like, I remember one time when I had done something I can't, my transgressions are too numerous to remember all of them, but I had done something that had gotten me quite out of tune, modestly out of tune. I should be more realistic, but things weren't going well. And I was feeling quite dismayed. I easily felt dismayed. And then I just had this realization, and it just looked to me like this. It's like attunement was here, and I had walked over here. And then I was over here, and then I was super unhappy. And then I got my brain together enough to realize I could just walk back. So I did. And I really think that's all the spiritual path is. We just get confused, and then we come back. And if you do that enough times, then you get less confused. You come back faster. I had a conversation with Swami. It might have been close to the same time. He was feeling rather tired of life, profoundly tired of life at that point. He just really was exhausted by the physical plane. And he was just talking to me about when he was just pouring it out to such an extent that gradually it became humorous, even to him, because there was just so much of it. And I said, well, sir, I don't know what I can do. And we were in Assisi too, and I think it was when the entire Ananda Assisi community went to India. And David and I were there to take care of everybody's job, basically. So I was cooking for him. And I said, I don't know what I can do for you, sir. And he just, with this exaggerated sense of patheticness, he said, you could make me a good Indian lunch. And so I was still sitting there. I was in his house there, and the kitchen is just 2 steps away in the Assisi house. And I was still sitting there, and after a while he said, why are you still sitting here? Oh no, I forgot a part of it when he said, I don't know what I could offer you except euthanasia. And he just looked, and that's when he said I could make him lunch instead. And I'm still sitting there, and so finally he said, why are you sitting here? I said, well, I'm afraid if I leave, you'll throw yourself off the balcony. I said, if you promise not to do that, I'll go make you lunch. So he said, I promise, like that. But it was so real. It was just so like, this is what it is. It isn't like it's like we're always free. But we always come back. When Swami was writing The Path, which was the last book he wrote before word processors, we called them then. That's probably such an arcane word, nobody uses it anymore. He was able to write it on a computer, but The Path was on a typewriter. So I typed his manuscript a lot. And let's see, where was I with that? Oh, yes. At some point he said, because it took him about 2 years to write that book, I think. Yeah. He said, at first I felt a great blessing from Master in writing this book. He said, and then the feeling went away. He said, and often God tests us like that. It's like, are we doing this for what we get? Or are we doing this for what we give? And do we have faith in our own experience? Even if the feeling isn't there. And he said he just had to persevere because his guidance hadn't changed, but the experience of that guidance was different. all of this is what I was saying is the reason I'm talking about Swami so much, how to be a disciple, how to really understand and how to make our lives around the fact that we are disciples. Is it the single criteria for every decision? How much does it really mean to us? How central is it really to our lives? Does everything revolve around our efforts to be in tune? And understand, in this age, at this time, in other incarnations, other things happened. In this incarnation, we're supposed to live this normal life. We're supposed to live in this extremely materialistic world and have our jobs and raise our families and just, go out for breakfast, all the things that we do, living in a place like this, and all the things that Swami did. He just lived in a very natural, relaxed way. When he was in Assisi, he'd go to his favorite cafes, and everybody knew him there. When he was in India, he would go down to the mall, go to the bookstore, and go to coffee. I mean, he didn't hold himself back from this world. Don't think it's that easy. Wouldn't it be simple if we could just repudiate everything and then just sit there in some bare room and think about God? No such luck, friends. No, it's much different than that. We have to pretend to be in this world, whereas in our actual hearts, we're never here. Or we're only here in the company of Master. Swamiji wrote in a letter to a friend, I don't remember the context that prompted him to say it. The details are gone. But Swamiji wrote, when I die and I'm in front of Master again, and he said, and I don't know why Swami said this, but he said, and Master will say to me, do you love me? And Swami wrote, he said, and I will say to him with my whole heart, you are all I have ever loved. Now just think about that. When we die, and we stand in front of, did you love me? How much else did I love? Or did I always love you through everything that was sent to me? You see, that's the challenge of this life. We don't get to just isolate ourselves. We have to love the Guru through the children, through the partners, through the work, through the illness, through the success, through the failure, through the persecution, through the disappointment. At one point, when Swami was being, tortured is the word I want to use, but pursued intently by people who wanted his destruction through the courts, through the legal cases. When we were in the 12 years of litigation and used to have to go over to this courthouse over here and sit in those courtrooms and deal with all that whole thing, at least we could go out to lunch, we'd just go out to a restaurant. We would say, in previous centuries we were all in prison in these situations. At least now we can order whatever we want. We can eat, it's not so terrible. But Swamiji at one point became extremely discouraged because very unscrupulous people were after him. And he left by himself and he went to Hawaii for a while. And he said, it wasn't a holiday. He just, hours and hours he prayed to Babaji. He said, I understand if you want to test me. That's all right. He said, but why have you let such unscrupulous, undharmic people have power over me? You see, it's interesting how the mind works. And he said, Babaji answered, they are all my children. And that was enough for Swamiji. He just came back quite comforted. They are all my children. Have you loved me? You are all that I have ever loved. Every time we look around, what we want to see is the Master's face. What we want to feel, either blessing or testing, either giving or taking away. We are so afraid and insecure and lonely in this world. And we are always in the company of the Master. Unknown, I will walk by your side, guarding you with invisible arms. Think about that. Meditate on that. Give your heart to that. Guarding you with invisible arms. What a promise. Not given lightly, and given by one with the power to keep that promise. What joy.
So silently and sweetly the Master comes to me. His love and joy enfold me in bliss and ecstasy. My mind is calm and peaceful, all cares are swept away, and in his omnipresence I know that I am free. My mind is calm and peaceful, all cares are swept away, and in his omnipresence I know that I am free. So sweet the sound of Om, 'tis Master's voice I hear, in all-pervading silence he whispers, I am here. My heart with joy is flowing, it sings eternally. There is no other love like the Master's love for me. My heart with joy is flowing,